This is the Work at Home Heroes podcast. Your host, Caitlin Pyle, digs deep with people from all over the world who make money from home. Get ready to wake up to a world of possibility for freedom, flexibility, and a life you'll love.
Well, hey everybody, welcome back to the Work at Home Heroes podcast. I'm here with Yael Bendahan, and she is a wife and mom of 4 boys, all under the age of 8. And she has a VA and social media management business. She became interested in the blogging world about a year ago. And as she slowly learned all that was involved, the email marketing, the social media, Pinterest, and everything, she realized that although a new blog might not bring in the income that she wanted, she could still use the skills she learned to do the work for others. And I think that's a genius idea. She got her first client in July, about 4 months ago, and her business has been growing slowly each month. Super excited to talk to you, Yael. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And she's in Israel, you guys. So we're going to be digging into that. It's at night when we're recording this. So Yael, thanks so much again for joining us. And I want to know, you mentioned before we started recording that you've pivoted your business a little bit. So tell us about that. What do you do?
I've kind of transitioned from being a VA as such to doing more digital marketing. I actually took Julie Stoyan's Digital Gangster course. I know, Caitlin, you're very involved with her. You're her client. Yes. And she's amazing because it kind of moved from doing VA work, then discovering social media. And from social media, it was like, well, people want Facebook ads, and people want Facebook ads, they want sales funnels. And I kind of like moved through that until I was like, okay, I gotta be doing this. That's what I'm kind of working towards now.
Yeah. So tell me, and you have 4 kids. So tell me what that's like, building this business while you have 4 kids all in the age of 8.
A little bit crazy. Yeah. I mean, they're all boys. So, it's never that quiet when they're around. They're all out for a certain amount of time every day. I get about like 4 decent hours of work in the morning, and then everything else I do at night, which is why I'm talking to you right now.
Cool. Well, we definitely appreciate it. Tell me then, Yael, how did you get into doing this? Was there a moment when you were like, I need to do something different in my life? I want to work at home. How did you get started doing what you're doing?
Well, I've been a mom since I was 19. I got married very young. After I had my 4th baby, we realized that we really did need a second income. But since I got married when I was 18, I had never gone to college. I didn't have any major skills. But I knew I didn't want to leave my babies to go out and work for a minimum wage job that might just pay for their childcare. So I was like, well, I told my husband, I was like, it might take me longer, but I'm going to just find something to do from home. So I discovered blogging. I started writing for a company here in Israel, which was paying me about $10 an hour. So that was not very sustainable because I didn't even like what I was writing about. But I found blogging and I was like, okay, wow, this is very cool. Moms do this and they make money. And after I started my blog, which is an organizedmommy.com, I realized that it could take a while to actually be making an income from my blog. And so a friend of mine, a blogging friend, was like, well, why don't you just kind of do what you've been doing, but for other people? And you can get paid for that, right away. So I was like, well, that's a great idea. So I started doing VA work, which I really enjoyed because I do like doing all kinds of things and I love helping other people. And this was perfect for me. And then, like I said, I discovered, social media because a lot of people wanted that. And then from there, I kind of moved into digital marketing and strategy. And that's where I kind of am now. I kind of just totally fell in love with the whole strategy aspect of it and going into people's businesses and figuring out where they need to grow and how they're going to grow.
I love it. I love that you caught on quickly to the fact that even though it takes a little bit longer than overnight, and there's so many people that think, oh, blogging is the key to riches, whatever, so I'm going to start blogging. And unfortunately, there's just a lot of misinformation out there that leads people to believe that blogging is the quickest way to make money online. And it's not always the case. I mean, there's obviously, people who are going to make money faster than others, but it's a skill that you have to build just like anything else. But you already had some skills and that you caught on to the fact that you could continue to build your skills with your own blog, but help other people with their blogs. And what's cool about that is that most likely if they're hiring an assistant to help them with their blog, they're a few steps ahead of you, in which case you can learn from more experienced bloggers and then in turn help yourself grow as well. So I think that's really, really cool. So you got married at 18. That is really, really cool. And I'm really impressed by that. And you've had 4 kids. I'm just blown away. And you were a stay-at-home mom. And so tell us more about what your life looked like, from when you got married at 18, when you first became a mom at 19. What did your life look like before you started working at home?
Yeah, I was a stay-at-home mom. My mom was actually a lawyer until I was about 5 or 6, and then she quit to stay home with us. So I do remember the time when she wasn't home with us, vaguely. And then she was so happy to just be able to be home. And that was just kind of how I felt my life was going, because that was what my mom did, right? And so I decided if I'm going to be a stay-at-home mom, I was going to be like the ultimate stay-at-home mom. I'm like a firstborn, overachieving type A. I was like, okay, so I'm going to just like rock the stay-at-home mom thing. So I had all my cleaning schedules and my meal planning, and I did like cake decorating, like for my own kids. Like I just enjoyed like doing stuff like that, and like, meals for people, because I had more time. I mean, it's not like I was sitting around twiddling my thumbs, but that was important to me to be able to like, help out my friends when they had kids and stuff. So that was pretty much, my head was totally not in work mode at all. It was just like momming all the day.
Yeah, well, it sounds like, I'm super impressed that you got your cleaning, your laundry, and your meals, all that stuff down pat, because I have not done that. And I've been married for like, I think it'll be 7 years in March, and I'm not even close to having any of that stuff down. So that's super impressive. You did it so young, and most kids, or I shouldn't even say kids, but most women, most people in that age just have not figured any of that stuff out. And so I think that you definitely found your niche, and that makes sense because you have your blog now, An Organized Mommy. So you're using your strength. Clearly you had the strength because you're able to do that at such a young age. And now you're working on monetizing that and helping other people. And of course, you said you love helping people. And so it just makes sense that you would start a blog like that. So you mentioned that you had gotten your first client in July of last year. And so that you're less than a year in, and this is a perfect story. I love to interview people in your shoes, because there's so many people who just have not gotten started because they keep hearing stories of people who are like 5 years in, right? And so this big reason we started Working in Mirrors podcast is so we could speak to people just like you. And so I want to talk to you about your income. Since you just started less than a year ago, what does your income look like? You said it's gone up every month. So where are you now?
This month, I'm on track to make about $2,000. And I have like 2 proposals going out to potential clients. If I get those, then it will be $6,000.
Wow, that is amazing. Yeah. That's huge growth. That's incredible. Congratulations.
Thank
you. So let's talk about what things started. Let's rewind back to July, and you got your first client, but you'd started your business a little bit before that. Let's talk about confidence, because that's like the number one thing that stops people, is that they have this self-doubt that's plaguing them, and they want to start their business, but they're like, I just don't have the confidence. You need the confidence to get started first. And I always tell them that the confidence comes after you start moving, right? You don't get confidence, you don't get momentum, you don't get traction unless you start moving first. If you wait for it to come to you, then that's just not the way, it's just physics, right? You don't get traction and momentum until you start moving. So what about you, Yael? Were you confident from the start, or did you have challenges in that area? Were there any obstacles that got in your way mentally or maybe emotionally when you were getting started?
Oh, absolutely. I have major self-confidence issues, like about pretty much everything, which is, it's ironic. I always had like self-confidence challenges. It wasn't as much as like self-confidence as much as just like, I need to do this, because if I don't do this, I'm going to have to be sending my babies out when they're 3 months old, working for a job that I probably hate. So I was like, I better just figure this stuff out to, just keeping it PG. I guess I have to figure it out, because I don't really have a choice. And that in a way was good, because it kind of really pushed me to like jump out, like go out of my comfort zone and push for a thing, and try to like, apply for jobs that I wasn't like 100% sure I was qualified to do. But I was like, well, I can always learn. And that's what I've been doing, basically client by client.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent attitude. And you bring up a good point in that you said you didn't have a choice. And I think in that way, that's a great way to look at it, because the reality is you do have a choice. It's either you stay doing the thing that you don't want to do, or you take a risk and you do the thing you do want to do. So you can either be unhappy and miserable, or you can take some action that's maybe a little risky or scary, and you overcome that thing, that life that you don't like. And you took that latter path, which is fortunately worked out very, very well for you. And you're growing your skills day by day. And I love that attitude you took, and that if you don't know what you're doing, then you can just learn. Because I think a big mistake people make when they first start wanting to work from home and get that bug, right? They want to start generating income on their own schedule, have that freedom, is that they think, oh, well, I don't have a degree in that, or I have to go back to school, or I can't do that because I don't know how. I'm like, well, you can learn. And so the attitude that you've taken is, if I don't know how to do it, I can learn. It's the perfect attitude. And you mentioned you took Julie's courses. I think that's amazing, because there's so many people as well that think, well, I don't want to pay somebody to learn how to do anything. They should just like, somebody's emailed me before even, they're like, oh, well, education should be free. And I'm like, that's not the way it works. Like, do you work for free? And so it can get a little sticky with different mindsets out there, but you definitely have the right mindset in terms of learning, because learning can really change everything. Your life has changed so much just in less than a year. And so I'm super excited to see where you end up a year from now, 2 years from now. I have no other expectation than the best expectations for you. So your life has obviously improved a lot since you started working from home. What are some changes that you've seen between in your life before versus now?
Well, before I just say that, I just want to say, I think it's very funny that someone said to you, education should be free, because has anyone heard of college?
Right.
Seriously. Okay. So
Right,
my life looks like now, it's definitely changed a lot, because until I started working, like my family, my home were like my one and only priority. Like I had no other ones, and now it was almost like having another kid. And, like, let's say when I had my first kid, all I knew was like taking care of that one child. And when I had my second, I was like, wow, I have to like consider two people at the same time. Like, how do you do that? And, it's hard. It's like having a baby. It's hard at the beginning and you get used to it. So on the one hand, what's harder for me is that I don't have as much time to keep my home as spotless all the time as I used to. I'm a very clean and neat person, and mess drives me crazy. And I've kind of had to learn to shut myself in my office, clean as much as I can, whatever I have time for, and then just close the door and just throw myself into working, and I'll deal with it when I come out, which is ironic because my office is actually my playroom. So I have to make sure that stays neat. Otherwise, I'll literally go crazy. But, if I have client work to do, I have client work to do. And I also don't have as much time to do all the other stuff I used to do. But I will prioritize things like, my kids' birthday cakes. Because for them, I know it makes a difference, because my 8-year-old was like the other day was like, oh, remember when you made those stuff? And like, he was 5. I want them to still feel like I'm there for them, and I love them. And, that's who I want to be. That's why I started working from home. But on the other hand, I think my favorite thing about working from home is meeting so many amazing people in the online communities, space, on Facebook groups. I've made so many amazing friends this year. They're just all so inspiring. Everyone has their own story. Everyone has, their own talents and their own skills. And it's just been so amazing to meet all these people that I would have never met otherwise. And yeah, so that has been really, really great for me. And I definitely feel very, pretty satisfied, at the end of the day when I get stuff done and I get actual, feedback from people, because kids are not that great at the positive feedback. So
right.
It's always nice to kind of get some of that at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think you hit on something really, really important, and something I like to highlight pretty often in the Work at Home Heroes Facebook group and all of my blogs and stuff. And that is surrounding yourself with people who are doing what you're doing. And I think that a big mistake that people make sometimes, especially when they're just starting out, is that they feel like they have to go it alone, that they have this lone wolf syndrome, and they look at other people in the online space, maybe offering similar services to what they want to offer, as competitors. When the reality is the pie is enormous and it is ever expanding. And you only need a very tiny slice of a tiny slice of a tiny slice to make a living online. And you all offer something different. Everybody has different skills. They speak a different language, and not every potential client out there is going to speak your language, but there are people out there who only speak your language, and they're just waiting for you to find them, right? And so you've got to have that proactive attitude, and being involved in the great Facebook groups, I think, is a great way to do that, and just getting out there and meeting people, because you just never know what kind of referrals can come your way. But if you're in your shell, in your little cave, being afraid to talk to other people, or feeling like they're all out to get you, or they're all going to steal your clients if you let them know that you're in the same niche as them or whatever, then that's not the best attitude. So you have an excellent attitude about that. Rewinding a little bit about skills. So you got married at 18, and you mentioned that you didn't have any past job experience. So you're kind of starting from scratch. So tell me a little bit about that, how you overcame the fact that you didn't have job experience. You got married early, started having kids, but you made let's say, lemonade out of lemons, right? A lot of people use that as an excuse to not get started, but you got started anyway. So tell us about that.
Yeah, the truth is, in my family, like I mentioned, my mom was a lawyer, my dad is a doctor. And so I kind of always had this kind of mindset that listen, if you don't go to school, you don't go to college, and you don't get a higher education, you don't get a profession, then that's kind of the only way. I was like, my family doesn't do business. We don't just don't do business. And then when it came down to it and I didn't have those things, I was like, well, I guess I just got to do business. Really no other choice for me. I can't, it would be really hard for me to go back to school now. I'd have loved, my dad's actually an OBGYN, and I would have loved to be a midwife, but it just, I just decided that that's just not my path. I don't want to be leaving my kids for 6 years while I study. And I was like, I just, I found a different path, and I'm so happy with it. In terms of skills, I think a lot of the skills I used to run my home, I kind of used to run my business at the same time. The biggest tip, I've told a lot of people this, for me is like batching tasks, like doing a lot, like all the, same kinds of things at the same time and breaking things down. Because like people would say like, oh my gosh, like how do you have time to cook for people? Or how do you have time like to make these crazy cakes, which I taught myself on YouTube because I'm like a very big DIYer. So, how do I make a cake? I didn't like say, okay, I've got all this time to sit around making a cake. I would bake a cake 3 weeks before the party and the frosting 2 weeks before the party. And then I would like make a little fun decorations like a week before and stick it in the freezer, and I broke it down to like the smallest pieces possible. That was how I managed to do the big things, right? So that's kind of what I do in my business. It's just learning how to break things down to like their smallest pieces and then learning, fitting them in whenever you have the time. And yeah, and also having a daily like routine. Like I'm very, very big on routines. Like my kids just know, like that's just how it is. And that's what they're used to. It just helps with the expectations and knowing, okay, this is this time and this is that time. And I have to obviously, like life is just a fluid kind of thing. And sometimes things do have to change, or sometimes I'll have to have a client call in the afternoon when my kids are home. But for the most part, because everything tends to run at the same times and go the same way, they're okay when when it's kind of changed up a little bit every once in a while.
Yeah, I think you hit on something really, really important there, in that you really did make lemonade out of lemons, and that you didn't say, hey, I didn't go to school. You saw past that and you're like, look at the stuff I can do to keep my home so organized. You run your home like an expert, right? Way better than me. And it's just crazy. And so you took those same skills and you applied them to your business. It really is the same environment, right? Your business is like a baby, right? And you have to get the stuff done on your business in the same exact way you get things done at home. And I love the analogy where, it was a true story, but you took the cake and you broke it up into small pieces and you ended up with the cake in the same way that you would have if you'd spent all day doing the cake. And that's the same aspect with like cleaning, and doing 10 minutes a day will make, cleaning day that much easier because things aren't a mess if you take 10 minutes every day to tidy up and stuff. And it's really the same thing with managing a blog post. You don't have to sit down and write a whole blog post in one day. You can write the outline one day, then the first 2 paragraphs the next day. And the same thing with writing a book. Nobody sits down and writes a book all in one day, right? They start with an outline and then they write 1 page at a time. A book is written not even a page at a time, a word at a time. And so we can sit down and break it into those tiny little pieces. You will end up with a finished project at the end. So you have what sounds like a pretty big family. Did you have their support from the beginning?
Oh, definitely. It's funny. It's actually funny because like when I started doing this, my whole family was like, well, it was about time. It's because in high school, in school in general, I moved to Israel when I was 12. So I had a bit of a harder time in high school. I kind of moved at a very rebellious stage in my life where I didn't really want to. And so it was hard for me to kind of catch up. I was like a star student in the States. And like when I came to Israel, it kind of like really like, kind of like broke me a bit in terms of like, wow, I can't just like slide by like I used to, right? I'd always been like, oh, she has so much potential. And why isn't she doing why aren't you doing anything? And so like when I actually did start working and I'm like telling them, okay, I'm doing this and I had this win. And they're like, well, of course you did, so they've been totally supportive. My friends, I have some friends who work outside the home and they can't imagine being home all day. They're like, they don't want to be in their house all day. I love it. And so they're like, well, if you love it, like we love it, like we're so happy for you. Good on you. So it's been really great. Thank God.
Awesome. What do you think would have happened if that had been the opposite? And because there's a lot of people that are in that boat where they're like, they want to do it, but nobody supports them. What advice would you give to those people?
I'm not 100% sure because thankfully I did have the support, but I have had other things where I didn't have as much. I think that you have to feel very whole with yourself, and you have to like really, like I did, kind of like weigh the pros and cons. Like, what is better? Would it really be better if you stayed at a job that was going nowhere, or would it potentially be better to try to do something that could be really big? Listen, as a parent, especially, you have to be responsible, and you can't just toss it all and be like, I want to just find myself right now, and it doesn't really matter if we can't pay the bills, because you can't do that. The great thing about doing this kind of work is that you can start as a side hustle and see if it works for you. And if it does grow, then that's great. But I definitely think you should at least try. And even if people don't believe in you, find the people online who do, because there are so many people who will and who have done it or are doing it and can be like, yes, you're doing something great. So, I say you find your support wherever you can find it. It doesn't need to be your immediate family, and doesn't need to be your friends. It could be your online friends or mentors or anything like that.
Yeah, I think that's excellent advice. You are the sum of the people that you hang around with most, and you can create that support. You don't have to be resolved to, oh, well, I guess if my immediate sphere of influence doesn't support me, I'm not going to do it. Like, there's so many people. The world is so big. The universe is so big. The pie is so big, right? You can go and find dozens and dozens, hundreds, thousands of people all over the world. Not even, I mean, you're in Israel, Yael, and you're not the first person I've interviewed from Israel as well. And so there's like 192 countries in the world, and most people have access to the internet in most of those countries. And so there's just so many reasons that you can create for yourself to get started. You can create your own support as well, which is, and I have no doubts that you would have done that had you not been in the position where you've had support of your family. So let's talk about your typical morning routine, because you have a busy life. You mentioned before you have like 4 good hours in the morning. So let's talk about what happens when Yael wakes up in the morning.
Okay, so I try to get up at 5 in the morning to work out. I've had periods where I was better about working out, and I felt much better about myself as a whole. I'm kind of getting, it's not like mom bod, it's like work at home mom bod, like where you're just kind of sitting and there's food. So I definitely feel like getting that start today makes me feel like I'm taking care of myself, and I tend to eat better on days that I worked out, because I'm like, well, if I did all the work, like I can't like screw it up.
Right.
So I'm usually like, I get in the shower by around 6, and my kids are starting to wake up and, banging on the door, and, we get my kids ready for school. They do their breakfast, they make their lunches, and I kind of get them out. They're out of the house by 8. My husband, he'll bring my 2-year-old to playgroup around like, 8:15 or 8:30ish or so. And so I take until 9, because I know I need to do this for myself, to clean up after the whole breakfast thing. Maybe sometimes I make myself a shake, whatever, laundry. If it's a laundry day, then I'll, switch the laundry. So I'm usually at my computer by 9, and I work until 1. I do take breaks every hour or so for like little bits of housework. And then, my baby comes home, not my baby, he's almost 2. He's still my baby, but he comes home around 1:30. So I put him in for a nap. But then at that point in the afternoon is more, people are starting to wake up in the States, right? So that's when I do some like networking on Facebook and connecting with people while I'm like eating lunch. Then my kids are all coming home. They're all home by about 3:15. So I kind of take the whole afternoon. I take the afternoon mostly, with them. I just did something really hard for myself, and I kind of cut off all screen time because they were getting too addicted, and that's making it really hard for me. But on the other hand, they're becoming very creative in what they're doing. So I kind of I said I limited it to Fridays, and like that is like my new challenge. And and I do, like I said, all my client calls and discovery calls and things like this. I do all that at night, because that's the time it's usually best for people in the States, which is who I work with, and because it's quiet, and that's when I can do it.
Yeah, and then your email box doesn't ping quite as often too. I get some of my best work done at night myself. So, Yael, what's next for you? Do you have any measures in place to make sure your business is growing, or are you happy with where you are? What's next?
Well, I actually just joined a mastermind with Summer Tannhauser. She just had one. She just was promoting it, and I actually won a coaching session with her as part of she did like a little challenge. And when I spoke to her, I really felt like I kind of resonated with her, and I felt like she could really help me. So now I've started this, and I feel like it's really getting me on track in terms of just doing the actual stuff, because I feel like I've been working too much on client work and not enough on my own business and building my own stuff. So my goal is to have a kind of a full service kind of digital marketing company with potentially some virtual assistants, but majorly just more helping with launches and helping to scale businesses that are ready to grow, geared towards female entrepreneurs in an industry. I'm working on my Facebook ads and sales funnel skills now. This is what I'm practicing. And I always want to, I always want to learn more. I'm such a course junkie. Whenever I see something new, I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to know that. So it's actually hard for me to rein myself in and go no, get good at the things you're learning now, and then you can learn the next thing, So
yes, that's excellent advice.
Yeah.
Yeah, excellent advice. And speaking of advice, my final question, because unfortunately we're running out of time. We could talk all night, I know, but I need to ask you, it's a question I ask every single guest, and that is, what advice would you give to someone who wants to work at home but is scared to get started?
Okay, well, who's not scared to get started? I totally get you. It's totally scary. There's always the potential for failure, and nobody likes to fail. And literally the only thing you can do is just jump in, don't look down. And there's nothing wrong with you have all these people going, these amazing like unicorn people, like Julie and like you, Caitlin, like you're amazing. How you've grown like so amazingly from your small blog to your multi-million business. So, it's very inspiring, but like people also need to know, I guess that's why you're doing this podcast, right? People need to know that it's okay to start small and to just grow your goals. Like at the beginning, I was like, ooh, if I can make $1,000 a month, that would be really great. And now I'm like, okay, I want to be making $10,000 a month by the end of at the end of 2018. So that would probably be like my biggest piece of advice. And the second thing would be to invest. It's very scary to invest, especially at the beginning. But like, for example, I bought Julie Stoyan's like digital gangster course. It was $2,000. It was the biggest investment I'd made in my business to date. And I thought about it so hard. And I was like, I really feel like this is going to help me grow my business. And I just jumped in. I was like, okay, I'm doing it. And I bought it. And it's like, I do not regret it. I cannot regret anything less than that investment. It's a hard thing to do, especially the scarcity mindset, which I know I have and I'm working on. But sometimes investing is like, can have such exponential kind of like reward that you do have to think about it, but you shouldn't hesitate to do it when you feel it's going to really help you.
Yeah, I think that is excellent advice. There is a difference between spending and investing. And I say the difference is that something that you invest is something that you can get back from over and over and over again. Like the rewards just keep coming. And I know how scary it is. I had the scarcity mindset as well. And yes, although it might seem like I had a lot of success relatively quickly, I've been proofreading since 2007. So I started my thing. I started making a little bit of money and I didn't take it full time until 2012. And it just kind of grew from there. But it started with just this one skill. And so you've had some excellent advice today where you just start with the one thing and then also just kind of avoiding that tendency to just learn all the things, because you can get addicted to that content consumption, right? And so really committing to learning the few things, getting really, really good at them, and then adding on skills is super, super important. And that's exactly what I've done over the years as well. And it sounds like that's what you're doing. That's what Julie did too. And we are going to have links in the show notes for finding out what Julie's up to. And we're also going to have a way to contact Yael. So how can people get in touch with you, Yael?
You can email me. It's hello@yaelbendahan.com, which is YAELBENDAHAN. You'll see my name, on the show notes. That's how it's spelled. And I'd love to be able to help you your ads, or if you want marketing strategies to help grow your business because you feel like you're ready to grow. I love doing that. So I'd love to be able to do that with you.
Great. Well, we're so grateful to have had you on the Work at Home Heroes podcast. Thank you so much, Yael.
Thank you.
Thanks again for listening, guys. I'd like to invite you to be a part of our Facebook community if you're not a member already. That group is called Work at Home Heroes. There's going to be a link in the show notes to find the group. We'll open up a discussion about this episode, so I hope to see you in there. Until next time.
Thanks for listening to the Work at Home Heroes podcast with Caitlin Pyle. Be sure to listen to previous episodes at caitlinpyle.co/podcast. While you're there, read the show notes and check out all the great links and resources mentioned in this episode and more. You can also subscribe to the Work at Home Heroes podcast so you'll automatically be notified when our next episode is available. Remember, as Caitlin says, mo skills means mo money.